We are back with another live. Hello, hello, hello. We are back with another live, and we're going to be speaking to Adam Booth from Park Village. We're going to be speaking to him a little bit about the pros and cons of signing with a production versus working with agencies as a freelance director. So anyone joining, if you have any questions about that, please sound off in the chat. Because trust me, this is one of the chats, like, don't get me wrong. The other chats have been great, but this is one of the chats that you want to be asking the questions. So just for anyone joining, we're going to be speaking to Adam Booth from Park Village. Park Village are a production studio in London. They've worked with many different celebrities, many different productions. One of my personal favorites is Killing Eve, which I'm gonna try and not fangirl over. But we're gonna be speaking to Adam Booth, who is a executive producer and also a managing partner at Park Village. So if you have any questions, he's the perfect person to ask. So we're gonna be going through, just again, the pros and cons of signing with a production versus working with an agency as a freelance director. So without further ado, I'm gonna invite him in and we can get to chatting. One sec. I'm actually quite excited. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Curtis. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Hello to all your viewers.
Right, let's get into it. So I just wanted to sort of like ask you a bit about yourself and like how you essentially got into kind of like executive producing and then also like kind of co-managing and founding Park Village.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't found Park Village. Park Village has been going for 50 years. It was founded by a guy called Peter Webb, who was a photographer. And it's now run by his two sons, Tom and Jack. So it's been around a very long time. Only RSA, I think, is Ridley Scott's company, has been around longer in London in the commercial space. So it's got a good long heritage. But me personally, I started out as an AD, so I was on set
Okay.
day in day out for kind of 10 years. And worked my way up being an AD, and then from being a first AD, I moved into producing. I moved to a production company that I started with a couple of mates of mine and stayed there for about 8 years, built a roster of directors and built up a body of work. And then when I left that, I went to an agency, which at the time was WCRS. Then it became Engine. It's now House 337. It's changed names a few times. But that was a really interesting experience in terms of working with directors in a very different way to when you're rostering them. And then after that agency, I started working at Park Village, and I'm back to managing a roster and looking after directors, which is a bit that I love.
Man, okay. Let's dive a bit into that because obviously working with the different sort of forms of different directors, so I want to just dive into the topic of like talk to me about the different processes because now that you've been in different spaces working with different types of directors, and given the topic is versus working with signed production versus agency, what is the difference? I feel like if we start at the base floor of what is the difference of the two.
We can do that. We can do that. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to both. I currently work at a production company, but I have worked at an agency. So I'm neither going to advocate nor slander either one of them because they both have their merits, but they are both very different. And certainly for directors, they're both very different. In that production companies, commercial production companies, especially traditionally roster directors, and in that sense, you've probably all seen their websites. They look after a number of directors, and it can be anything from kind of 5 directors to 45 directors. Like some of the biggest companies have got the biggest rosters, and they look after them in the sense of they find them work. They act a little bit like an agent, and they go and source work from them from ad agencies. But they kind of do a lot more than that as well. They nurture them, they help them build their career, they invest in passion projects. They really try and craft a director's career and help a director on every step of their journey. Now, the length of that journey depends on how long they stay with that particular production company and which production company the director picks. But essentially, one of the key differences, I think, is that you've got a really experienced production support network around you, in that most production companies have got full-time producers, PAs, exec producers, sales agents, importantly. So you've got an infrastructure around you. I mean, we're lucky enough to have a studio. We have our own studio in London. We're one of the few production companies that does. So all the benefits of working with of being rostered by a production company really comes with that company's infrastructure. Now, the difference with agencies is they're set up on a very different model. So they still use directors for the same thing. They still want to shoot ads with directors, but they engage with them in a very different way, in that they will engage you on a project by project basis. There's none of that kind of nurturing and support, because it doesn't benefit their business to do that. They want to be able to sleep around, if you like, and work with as many different directors as they can. But there's also a bit of a barrier to that, in that some, and this is changing and we can get into that later, but ordinarily some of the best directors want to be with a production company, or some of the busiest directors want to be with a production company, because it gives them that layer of protection. Whereas when you're freelancing in and out of agencies, you may work with multiple different agencies and see multiple different scripts, but you don't get the same support network. But you do get to meet an awful lot of different people that you wouldn't ordinarily meet. So you will work with umpteen different producers at different agencies, and each agency will work in a slightly different way. Some of them will be slightly more beholden to your creative views than others. Some of them may just be inclined to do what the client wants, which is never necessarily the best thing for the work. So I think it's as important to think about which agencies you're engaging with and on what. If you're going to be freelance and you're going to go and work at an agency as a freelance director, I think it's always really useful to ask yourself, well, who are the actual, because the company itself doesn't really have a visible outward reputation in the way that production companies do, not in the same way anyway. So I think you've got to ask more pertinently, who are the people that are asking me to work for them here? And what do I think of those people? Because you're going to be working with them for a month or a couple of months. And I would argue that perhaps agencies, that kind of curation of the director's thoughts, feelings, vision it takes a second seat to the client, which is what you'd expect, because they are beholden to clients, and production companies, I would argue, are beholden to agencies, but they're also beholden to their directors in a way that agencies aren't.
Interesting. So, sorry, just to reiterate that, essentially, if you're going with a production company, you're more likely to essentially, you're not that, they're not considering your opinion, but it's like it's about the client at the end of the day. But then, would you say, if it's then, for example, a freelance director, it's more about their own work?
Um, I think I think as a freelancer, so I think the key difference for me is, as a freelancer, um, working with multiple different agencies and potentially production companies. You know, production companies also hire freelance directors. If they don't have a director on their roster that suits the script, then you may get hired by a production company or an agency. Potentially, you might even get hired by a brand. They're also moving into that space. But I think the key difference is, um, it's a lot more hand to mouth. You don't have a shoulder to cry on. You don't have as much support. You don't have um, someone that's on your team specifically, because to your point about clients, agencies are set up, no matter how nice the people are and how wonderfully creative they are, and they are, because I've worked with a lot of them, they are still always beholden to the client. They still have to get what the client wants out of the job. And so they're always going to try and persuade you, for better or for worse, as to the client's opinion. You don't get nearly as much of that from production companies. You do still get it, because obviously, in the end, the client is always the boss, whether it goes through a production company or whether it goes directly to an agency. But I think what you get with a production company is you have your team that are always your team, and they are your team that are, they know you really well. They look after you. They might have been working with you for a year or 2 years or 5 years if you're lucky. And so they understand you better as a director. They understand what your wants and needs are. They understand what your creative vision is going to be. Like me as an EP, I could talk to an agency about what most of our directors are going to think of a script, because I know them all really well. So I know them well enough to have an informed opinion about what they think. Whereas an agency producer who's working with you as a director for the first time, this is the first time they've met you, first week they're working with you, you don't know them, they don't know you.
Mm.
You lose all of that shorthand of working with a team.
And I get you. It's essentially it becomes less efficient, and it just becomes a kind of every time you're working with the person, you're refreshing the sort of the creative synergy that you have between you, and it just then slows down the process. And actually, a lot of things get lost in translation. Whereas if you're working with a production company house, like it's just like we know we've done this 100 times. We've got the shorthand, as you said. It can just be done quite simply.
I think it really depends what kind of person you are as a director, and also what point in your career you are as a director.
Mm.
Like whether you feel like you need that team around you, because some people actually quite like that kind of first day at school feeling, and that's what I
Mm.
kind of equate it to. It's like you've either got the comfort zone of a family without being too
Mhm.
trite about it, or it's that first day at school feeling every time you go into an agency. Every
It's so
job is
funny because I
new.
was actually going to ask you what person is better suited in your experience. What do you find the type of person who's better suited for one or the other? So, like, actually, I want to ask you that.
Uh, I don't know. There's definitely personality traits that suit one or the other better. I'm not sure I'm best positioned to say what type of person is better for what. But I think if you like the comfort of working with the same people and having a team and having people that stand behind you and back you up, like I kind of feel like most people want that, and that's certainly what you'll get from a production company. You'll get producers and EPs that fight for you and fight for your vision and try and do what's best for you and what's right by you, because in the end it benefits them as a company. They want to hang on to you as a director, especially if you're a busy working director. They want to keep you happy because you're one of the things that is helping the production company be successful. If you're the kind of person that gets excited about meeting new people every time and going, well, last time was a bit of a headache, but maybe this time it'll be amazing. And I suppose you get a lot more variation in that. You probably get a lot more variation in the type of work you get, because agencies, arguably, maybe, have a really broad spread of the type of things that they do, whereas production companies are often in a bit of a niche. Not entirely, but sometimes you might be the production company that does comedy really well, and therefore you're only really seeing comedy scripts. Or like most agencies have a view of a production company as to what they think their kind of niche is, and therefore you might only be getting those sorts of scripts from a production company. If you go to an agency or multiple agencies, you'll probably see a much wider variation of scripts, but maybe all of them don't suit you. But if you're the kind of person that likes that challenge of like, right, everything is new every time, like, and maybe people will be on my team, maybe they won't, like, I'll figure it out when I get there. Like, I think there's definitely a lot more. You've got to be happy to be out of your comfort zone, I think, when you're with agencies, and I
Mm.
suppose that's the main difference. Like, do you want to have a comfort zone where you kind of feel like people are on your team, or do you want to do the kind of slightly more hair raising thing of like, let's see who these guys are and what happens?
That's amazing. And I think just that segment of what you were talking about is going to be super helpful for people watching and also for people that are going to watch like after this. We do have a question from Caroline saying, what should you do if you've signed but you're not getting any work?
I mean, that is a really good question, and it's a really good question at this time in the industry as well, because I think
Mm.
like I don't know how many people are aware of it, but things are quite tough in the industry at the moment. In that, not only for production companies, there is less scripts around. I think pretty much across the board. Some people are seeing more than others, but it's definitely there's been a downturn in the number of scripts. But also agencies are having a pretty tough time. There's been a reasonable amount of redundancies at some of the bigger agencies in recent times, and there's all sorts of economic reasons for that, global reasons for that, as to why there's been a slight downturn. And I think that's where the question comes in. If you're with a production company and you're rostered at a production company, you're only seeing the scripts that they receive. So you're reliant on what your production company is offering up most of the time. With agencies, at least you can kind of sleep around a bit more. You can jump from one agency to another. You can see who's got what. You can kind of go and sell your wares all around town. But I think that's the other main difference is you've got to sell yourself. So if you're a freelancer, you've got to be a really good salesperson for yourself. You've got to have a reel that you believe in. You've got to be able to talk about your work, sell your work, go into agencies, talk to them, find out who's got what jobs, like who's got what accounts at what agencies. You have to do all that legwork yourself. At production companies, they have salespeople to do exactly that for you. So they are the ones going out, talking about your work, selling your work, trying to find the scripts, going to the agencies. But still, if you have loads of confidence that you can do that yourself, and you're a real people person, and you're a talker, and you can walk into any room and engage people, like, you might do well at agencies, because there's a huge part of it is just finding the work, just going out there, knocking on doors, finding the work, showing you're real. At production companies, you don't have to do it quite as much, but you might see, like, depending on how energized you are about that sales effort, you might see less scripts because you're only getting the scripts that they're sending you. So I suppose, to answer the question, if you're signed but not getting any work, I would question the production company in terms of the exclusivity. It used to be that all production companies would try and ensure that their directors were exclusive, and at the moment Park Villages are, and but there's flexibility within how exclusive people are, right? I think from a moral perspective, I don't think it's fair to say, if you can't pay your mortgage because there's no workaround, that's hard cheese, you can't go to work. So I think most production companies now, in the climate that we're in, are kind of flexible on that, and they kind of say, look, if there's not a conflict of interest and it's not damaging to us as a company, and you find a bit of work over there, it's possible that you can do it. But I would say it's a really good point, because there'll be less of those, like, can't I do it hurdles, if you're just going to an agency as a freelancer. You can work with whoever you want, and get as many scripts as you want, but it's on you to get them. Whereas with a production company, it's more on them to get them for you, and you would hope, being experts in that they're doing the job of getting them. But at the point that they're not getting them for you, I think it's really reasonable to have an open conversation with them and just say, how do you expect me to pay my bills? I've got to do something.
On that topic, and I think that's yeah, I think that's perfect. I just want to, because actually we just got a question from Caroline, which actually is my next question. Is there anything directors could be doing to make themselves more attractive? So skills, attributes of a new director to have. So say, for example, maybe that's working with Park Village. Like, what should they be doing slash to essentially make them more attractive to these companies that they're reaching out, or to a production company like Park Village?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is. I would say still, it's 99% reliant on the work. Like, if you've got great work on your show reel, people are going to take notice. And so I think, directors are great at being resourceful. They're great at doing stuff without necessarily the means, because they're so creatively driven to just go and do it, right?
Hmm.
So I would say, like, shoot as much as you can. Like, scrape together a bit of money from an agency or a brand or your grandfather's mate or whatever it might be, and try and build a show reel that people are going to take notice of. And I would also say, importantly, don't put stuff on that show reel that you're not proud of. Like,
Hmm.
if you look at your own work, say you've got 5 pieces of work and you're really proud of 3 of them, and 2 of them you're like, man, that could have been better. Had it all gone better on the day, I could have made those look nicer. Then maybe don't put them on the reel, because bad work on a show reel is sometimes more damaging than less work on a show reel. So I would say,
Right.
just go with the ones that you believe in. Go with the ones that you think really show off your skills. Don't go with the ones that you're like, oh man, the shoot was such a cock up that I just kind of scraped together what I could, and it's better than nothing. Better than nothing is probably not good enough. So I would say, shoot as much as you can, and even if that is on an iPhone or on a DSLR camera, whatever it may be, like, do the best you can with what you've got and create stuff, write stuff. Because whether you're writing a feature script or a short script, or whether you're just writing treatments, like, all of that is really, really valuable, because it helps you craft narrative in your head. It helps you, think about character arcs in your head. And that's as important with a 60-second ad as it is with a feature film. Like, you've still got to do those things. So that skill of just writing stuff is really useful. And writing stuff in and of itself may not get you a job, but what writing does is get other people engaged in that. There's no point in writing
Hmm.
tons of stuff and then leaving it on your laptop. Write stuff,
Hmm.
show it to people, because you never know when an EP or a producer, or, if you're lucky enough to know someone at a broadcaster, they might see an idea where they go, that's an amazing idea. We should do that, and I'm going to help you do it. So I think, write stuff, shoot stuff as much as you can. And it's really, like, the skills and attributes are probably about being able to do as much of that as you can. And that's not to say, as an established director, you'll be expected to sing the theme tune, write the theme tune, do the tap dance. Like that's not necessarily, but if you can do that at the beginning of your career and you can, you can shoot, cut, grade, write, like if you can do all
Mm,
of that on your first couple of projects, you won't have to continue doing it for the rest of your career. But it gives you a really rounded view of what all those people do and what all those roles take and the time that those things take. And everything is so easy to access now in terms of the tools to be able to do those things. Like even if you give it a try and you go, that's not for me, like grading is definitely a skill that I'm going to put down, but give it a go because it's really useful knowledge, because then just when you're talking to an agency about grading, it gives you that background knowledge. And there's so much
mm,
amazing content online to kind of help you get a better education as to how to be a director. Like things like masterclass are amazing. If you can find content which is directors talking about directing, they might be feature directors, it might seem a bit out there to compare yourself to them, but all of it's really valuable. So I think,
mm,
make yourself an expert in your field, even if you don't feel like you're kind of smashing it and getting huge paid pitches. It's the knowledge base that really works, because there's nothing worse than getting on set with a director who's had a really lucky streak of somehow getting into the industry because his dad was Roger Deakins or whatever, and he walks on set and you're like, geez, this guy hasn't done his homework. He's like the crew are standing around scratching their heads going, I'm not sure that this person knows what they're doing.
mm.
That's the worst position to be in. And I've been on a couple of those sets, and you're very lucky if you can walk onto a set as a director without having done the homework. Not many people can, but it just gives you a really solid base. You've got to embed yourself in the stuff that you want to do, which is kind of true of everything in life, right?
Yeah. That was honestly like gospel. And I'm so glad that we caught you saying that, because I think that is what every director needs to hear, essentially, is tap into everything so you understand everything, do your homework, um, be scrappy, and just do everything essentially.
And also don't worry that it's not working. If you've done a couple of months of shooting something at a weekend, or trying to figure out how Premiere works of an evening, like just because it's hard and it feels like it's going nowhere, don't just write it off. Like because it just the process is valuable. Even if you get to the end of it and you go, that short film I shot was crap, and most directors do. By the time they've progressed a few years, almost every director looks back at their first short film and goes, that was a piece of shit. But it's fine, because that's learning, right? You're very, very lucky or extremely talented if you knock it out the park with the first short. So make a few crap ones, make a few mistakes. I think Ed Sheeran always goes, man, I've wrote so many shit songs that you wouldn't believe it. Like it's true. You like to be great.
Mm,
You've got to screw some things up. So I think don't lose hope if it feels like it's not going anywhere, because if it's what you really want to do, like the
mm.
process is a learning curve as well.
And it's like lowering the bar, not the bar of the quality of work, but lowering the bar of like the pain of failure, because it's like you're gonna have to fail a couple of times. I'm gonna jump straight into the comments because we've got a few. So we've got one question from Esk or ESC. With production company, would a production company be open to signing with a director that doesn't have a big name or their portfolio, but they can see that they have the right ideas from their niche?
Yes is the short answer. So what you'll find EPs like myself and producers at production companies are very good at is, I want to say spotting talent, but it's a bit more than that. It's spotting people that have the potential to be nurtured, and you can only really try and judge that through the work. So it's ideal if you come to me with a really well-established reel, and you've got 8 or 9 really good bits of work, and some of them have got brands against them, and some of them are music videos with like known artists in. Amazing. But at that point, you're kind of on your way anyway, right? That's not breaking in, you're kind of almost there. But like some of the most interesting directors that I've seen, so whether I've signed them or whether I've seen them signed elsewhere, if they've been signed off the back of one really good piece of work that like no one knew they needed before it turned up. Like I think it is always the quality of the work, and that doesn't just mean production value. That doesn't mean it has to
Mm,
look like you've spent 50 or 150 grand on it. It's
mm,
really about the execution in terms of like the idea, and whether you built a character and whether you've found a narrative. And this is just as, like I say, it's as true in ads as it is in films. And I think EPs are really good at spotting that. So you don't have to have tons of work and you don't have to have tons of brands, but you do have to have a good idea, and you have to prove that you've got a good idea by putting it on screen in the right way. And, you know, not everybody is lucky enough to be good at that, but if you're a creative person, you should keep going, keep trying. Um, but I think, you know, there's this funny thing with AI at the moment, and I don't want this to turn into a big AI speech because I'm not on that tip. But I think the interesting thing about AI now is that you can have an idea without having any of the resource and the skill in terms of actually shooting something. So most of us, I would assume, don't necessarily want to go down the AI route and just prompt stuff. But actually, there's probably some value in testing ideas and going,
Mm,
is as a narrative, does this work? I saw a fucking great one the other day where like the output was a bit shit because it's all clunky and
yeah. But it's
like
like
nothing was.
previs. It's always going to be a little bit shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But actually, the idea was fucking great. And then you go, well, you know, as a proof of concept, that's good. Like now go and shoot it. Now go and actually shoot it with a crew because that's the reason that we want to be in this business, right? You want to be in a team of people that are working together to create something on set. You want to blow shit up. You want people falling off ladders. You want like all of that drama going on in front of you. You don't necessarily want to be sat in front of a laptop. I think that's what attracts most people to it. And that's still true, and I think will continue to be true for a while. But it's really like having an idea, having something that you want to be able to say, and that's why a lot of directors, more so in previous years, but a lot of directors start in music videos because you get a lot of creative freedom. You get a lot less creative freedom in commercials. You know, the client wants something, and the agency's written something, and that's, you know, you're going to shoot something that's pretty similar to what they're after. Music videos are kind of wide open, but also your own passion projects are wide open, right? You can kind of shoot whatever you want. And if you've got a great idea, just as if you have a great idea as a director on a music video, like that's the thing that makes people take notice, not whether it was shot on a Arri Alexa with, you know, so and so grading it from etc. Like that stuff helps, but that's not the thing that EPs are really looking for. They're looking for that little kind of nugget of talent of like this person with more money and more kind of curation from the experience of this company, they're going to be good. And we're great at spotting it, and you can't always tell people exactly what that is.
Mm.
That is the golden kind of nugget, but you'll know that if you send, and like I say, don't send work that you're not confident in, but if you send work to enough production companies and it's good, someone will notice it, and that's definitely true.
That's amazing advice. And what I'm gonna do, because because we need to wrap up soon, I'm gonna quickly fire these questions at you, and
Yeah,
we're
go
gonna
for
do
it.
a quick fire round. So, Oliver asks, in today's economy, if you were a director seeking for work, what approaches would you take that people may not know about?
I don't know if people don't know about them because there's a million and one ways into directing. Like there's not one straight route. It's not like you go to college and do a course and then you're a director. You can go to college and do a course, but that doesn't mean you're a director. Um, so there's a million and one ways into it, and you've got to kind of choose whatever works for you. I'm not sure that there's that many that aren't known yet, but I would say take the thing that most engages you. Like if you're interested in fantasy stories and therefore the stuff that the ideas that you're dreaming up would require a load of VFX, maybe you do start with a bit of AI to test and learn some stuff. Or if you're more of a kind of Ken Loach and you're just so finely tuned on emotional engagement between two characters, that's easy stuff to shoot on an iPhone, right? Get two people that are reasonable actors in a room. Like you can make some great content with
Yeah.
the bare minimum.
I think this person might be indicating more towards sort of like paid work as a director.
Paid work as a director. Is there any other ways in? Well, what I've seen over the last few years, like music videos have dropped off a bit. I think in my experience, um, because labels are spending less on music videos and spending more on social. So I would say like social content creation is probably a pretty good way in that like if you can build a social following of any degree and it gets a bit of traction, then that's a great way to test and learn with your own skills, and then potentially that will get picked up by brands. So I think I've had more luck in recent years working with either very small brands, like we did a startup brand a few years ago, and we shot everything at the studio, and it was paid work, but it was paid very little. But it was kind of like music video money, but for a startup brand. So I would say potentially find those little startup brands and reach out to them, show them some of your work, and go, I can make you a great video. Like, give us 5 grand or 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever it might be.
Mm. Adam, thank you so much for dropping so much wisdom on this chat. Um, I feel like it's going to pay dividends for the upcoming directors and the upcoming creatives and the people coming after. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this sit down chat. And anyone who's watching, you'll be able to watch this back, and any questions that you probably have, he's already answered. Trust me, with that and more. And you'll be able to watch this on the Instagram, the Shiny Instagram, and also the Shiny website archived, where all of the videos and the interviews that we've done are located there. So thank you so, so much.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing new work from people.
Amazing. All right. Take care.
Cheers, guys. Take care.